Welcome to day one of the Unitask Get Social activity. Today is all about driving sales via social media, and for this we're going to look at the social media user and what they're actually looking for when they come on to social networks. I have some slides to share, so if you just bear with me whilst I share them. Okay, for those of you who were not on the webinar last week, just a quick intro to who I am. So my name's Karen and I founded a company called Digital Blonde, and we help businesses in the food, drink and hospitality industries with their marketing. I think we've become well known for our skills in social media, having helped businesses for a massive range of businesses in terms of training, maybe managing their accounts or helping with the larger digital and social strategy. So lots of experience that hopefully I can share with you today. So if you were on the webinar, just a quick recap. Last week, I talked about the fact that around 78% of the UK population are actually social media users. So there is a lot of opportunity here, and you shouldn't really think about the consumer and B2B. You should just think about marketing to individuals who happen to work for a company or happen to buy things personally. In the UK, we are spending around 1 hour, 50 minutes on social media a day. So again, we've got lots of opportunity to reach people, but what we absolutely must remember is that this is fragmented concentration. So they may well be jumping on for 30 seconds. They may well be looking at social channels just before they get into bed when they're tired. They may be looking at social channels on a commute when we're allowed to travel again. But what social is doing is actually they're stepping up the levels in terms of where people are going to find out about brands and what businesses are up to. And actually, if you look at this, will be no surprise to you that many people go straight to a search engine when they want to find something out. But look what's coming next. People are going onto social networks and actively searching for the sort of content that they're looking for, whether that's entertainment or education or to connect with others. And I'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. What we also must remember is younger people are behaving slightly differently. So if we look at this, actually 16 to 24-year-olds are using social networks as their primary search tool when looking for information about companies and brands. So what we may find is over time that this is becoming more and more important, and so it's good to start building a presence now. Anyone who hasn't built a presence, it's not too late, but you are sort of slightly behind the curve, and therefore it's a good idea to get those accounts set up. In the notes that were with the email that you were sent today, there are a number of links, and you should be able to follow those for some of the things that I've spoken about today, but also for setting up your social accounts. So the first question that we're going to address today is, which channel should you be on? Well, each channel has its own benefits. Personally, and if I'm using social media kind of in that relaxation mode, then I'm probably going to go to Instagram. But quite a lot of times through my working day, I'll go to Twitter or LinkedIn to find something out about what's maybe going on in the industry or what the latest news is. And then Facebook, again, I'll probably use different, but I do find a lot of the content that I'm seeing on Facebook is actually driven by my behavior and the things that Facebook thinks might interest me. And that can be coming from businesses who are promoting. It can be because Facebook has recognized that people I know or people similar to me are looking at this sort of content. So from your business perspective, what works for one of you will definitely be different to what works for somebody else. So let's just have a little bit of chat about which content and where. So if you're going to do Instagram, you need to have really strong imagery. You can't really go into Instagram with poor images because people will just switch off. We've got two sides to Instagram. You've got the Instagram grid, and you've got the Instagram stories. So the grid being what we traditionally saw on Instagram, the square posts that you scroll through, and the stories going across the top of the page in terms of, and they're in portrait format. You can generally get away with putting more in the moment, less high quality content in your stories, whereas your Instagram feed should almost look like a coffee table and beautiful. So Twitter, well, a lot of people go to Twitter for opinions and news, or to connect with other people within an industry. It's particularly in food, it is very good for connecting with other businesses. But the sort of content you might put on Twitter is probably more, sharing thoughts on things that have happened in the industry, maybe working together with other people to bring about changes. And you might not get as much content to your benefit in terms of driving sales with, say, product offers. I think you'd be looking at some of the other channels for that. And you may, for product offers, be on Facebook. So Facebook is really a very mixed place in terms of what you can achieve from a business point of view. I'd look at it in two ways. You've got your Facebook business page, and then you've got your Facebook group. And on a group, the Facebook newsfeed will prioritize group content. So I tend to find in my newsfeed, I get lots of content from the groups I'm a member of, but I don't see quite so much of what my friends are doing. And we'll come on to the Facebook algorithm shortly, and you'll start to understand why. So I think Facebook is one of those places where you can go for a mix, because the algorithm is quite complex and quite clever in terms of which bits it picks out to put elsewhere. So LinkedIn, you shouldn't just see as a CV on a social network, because it's become way more than that. Over the last year, during the various stages of the pandemic, what we found is people are turning more to LinkedIn to share opinions, to encourage each other, to solve challenges. So you may find that, again, it's a good way to reach customers, but you also may find it's a good place to sort of talk about some of your business brand values. So what is your view on sustainability? What are you doing in that area? So each channel you may get different things from, but as a suite, they work together. Now, there are other social channels that I haven't discussed just now. You're probably not going to find that TikTok is going to drive you a huge amount of sales in your businesses. So I mentioned the Facebook algorithm. Well, the Facebook algorithm is basically a set of code, but what it's actually doing is working out how we all behave on social networks. So if I start liking certain types of content, so I happen to like quite a lot of food imagery, then Facebook is probably going to pick out food content to show me over content that's maybe cats and dogs. I'm not a big cat lover. I actually have pet alpacas, so I'm more likely to see alpacas in my newsfeed. So Facebook are quite secretive about their algorithm, as are all the social networks. And you don't necessarily get a huge indication of exactly how it works, but there are principles, and Facebook have published these principles that they work to on their social network in terms of the algorithm. And I would say if you follow these, then you're in very good stead for working across the different networks. So the first thing that a social network will look at is how recent a post is. And when you log into a social network, they are more likely to show you content that's been posted recently than content, say, 2 weeks old. So what this means is what you need to do is jump onto the social networks and post your content or schedule your content at a time when the customers you're trying to reach are at a down point. So I often use the example, think about a school mum. So obviously this isn't the right market for you, but it's a good concept to get your head around. You wouldn't post content aimed at a mum with children of school age at 9 o'clock in the morning. You'd go for 8 o'clock at night when the kids are maybe in bed and they're just sitting down to relax a little bit. So what you're trying to do is think about your customer base and what are their down points throughout the day. Which points are they switching off? Which points are they maybe bored? Which points have they maybe lost concentration? And that's the time that you want to put your content out there. And that's important because of the second part, popularity. So a more popular a piece of content is, the more the social network is going to show it. So what you want to do is hit the news feed at the time when your customers are online, and then produce good quality content so that people want to interact with it. So if you've not put time and effort into your content, you're almost completely wasting your time posting anything. And actually, it's probably better not to. And that's because of the fourth one, relationship. I used to follow a particular food brand, and I used to interact with them all the time by liking their posts, for example. But what I found is over time, I didn't see their content appear in my newsfeed anymore. And what it was I was no longer clicking on their images or liking their post or leaving a comment. And so Facebook worked out that that wasn't of interest anymore to me. See, what you really want to do is maintain a good relationship with your customer base on social, so that the social network continues showing that content to you. You may notice that there's certain friends you see in your social feeds more than others, and that's because you're interacting with their content. The third one, and don't worry, I didn't miss it out, is content type. So the social channels know what sort of content we're most likely to interact with. So whether we're more likely to interact with a video, whether we're more likely to interact with images. And it will determine who it shows what to based on that behavior. What it's also trying to do is make sure that we've got a good balanced news feed and we've got a variety of content. So if everybody, so for example, if all the businesses that were marketing to me right now were putting a video and I don't react that well to videos, then there's probably not going to be much engagement. Whereas if the brands are swapping between video and imagery and I start to interact, then we're going to see it in the news feed. So this is my news feed, and the reason why I've seen this post from the Craft Guild of Chefs is because I interact with the Craft Guild of Chefs on a regular basis. So this is a Facebook thing, and Facebook know I would interact with them. It's seen me like posts, and therefore it's going to show it to me. So think about how you're going to get your customer base to start interacting with your content. Because as I said in the webinar last week, noise and the amount of people marketing at the moment and will continue over the summer is definitely on the increase. So to get your content to cut through the algorithm and the amount of other content out there, you need to produce better content. So how do you go about thinking about what sort of content you're going to put out there? Well, nobody goes on social media to say, give me a load of adverts, give me a load of sales messages. That's like saying we turn the TV on purely for the breaks and to watch the adverts. We don't do that. So that's how to think about it from a social point of view. You need to give a good balance between content that helps, that entertains, that connects with other people, as well as gets across your sales messages. So rather than thinking, what do I want to post? You should be thinking, what do my customers want to see? You should also consider, why do people even go on social media? So again, thinking about myself or yourself, I'm sure there's times where you've gone on social media just because you're bored, or maybe you're feeling a bit lonely, there's maybe nobody else in the house, maybe you've got some time to kill before a meeting and you're feeling a bit distracted. They're not going there to say, please show me some marketing messages. So a good way of thinking about content that you produce, consider it into kind of three groups: content that entertains your customer base, content that educates, and content that connects them with other people that are similar to themselves. It's absolutely fine to put some sales messages in there, and tomorrow we'll talk about some of the psychological principles that you can do that. But try and think about your social content plan having an element of each of these three in there. And education is a very strong one. So could you give some guidance on how to sell a particular type of product? Have you got some new research into merchandising? Have you got some advice on food trends? All of these are going to help the customer. Then ask yourself, why would somebody choose to follow my account? And if you're not putting very good content out there right now, then you can probably start to work out that maybe that's not right for you. But if you're already putting a nice variety of content out there, it's not just special offers, you're not just pushing a product every single time you post, Then maybe if you're not sure on this, one of the things is to do is a bit of research with your customer base and find out why it is they follow you or what sort of content they would like to see. There's research out there that says, B2B buyers and people working in businesses are using social media to help inform their purchasing decisions. So things like the people that they're dealing with, the way that you work, as well as what you offer, are of all of interest to the customer. So to leave us where we are today, I'm going to just run through 5 things that I feel you should take away from day 1 of the Get Social activity, and then we'll talk about what's coming tomorrow. So the first thing, I hope that putting that customer-centric view has made you think about, maybe it's a good time to talk to your customers. Actually, at the moment, it's a really good time to do focus groups or even one-to-one interviews, and just ask people to join a 10, 15-minute Zoom call and ask them some of these questions. People are generally willing to help you, and if they're going to see they're going to get some benefit back, then they're likely to as well. So I don't think so. Research has ever been so cost effective as it is right now. The second thing would be to look at your data. So in the links with the email today, there's something called Bitly, and I use Bitly to track every single piece of content that I post. So I'll know how many times somebody clicked on it, whether they were individual people or whether that one person was coming back particular times. What day of the week are they interacting most with? Can I tie those with those things with reposting content on a different channel? So Bitly is a great free bit of tracking software to help you know what people are going to. Then each of the social networks has really good insights. You don't need to pay for additional tracking software. You can get a lot of it from the social networks, and I'm sure you've seen that there is a competition running this week to win 3 months social support from ourselves. And one of the things we will do with you is actually go through your data and work out what is and isn't working from you. We'll look at posts that have got better engagement, we'll look at posts that have got better click-throughs, and what hasn't worked, because actually often looking at the things that have had 0 interaction or very little interaction can tell you more about how you should be proceeding. The third thing, the third takeaway, is to remember the algorithm. So although I talked about it very much from a Facebook perspective today, that idea of recency, popularity, content type and relationship is all very relevant across the channels. Some channels will prioritize videos. So Facebook generally prioritizes videos and group content, and content that's had a lot of comments over others. I find on some channels, for example, on Instagram, I tend to find that images perform better, but that's not to say that would be the case for yours. So again, if you were lucky enough to win this prize, we'd be able to go through and look at that in detail with you. The fourth thing is looking at the types of content you put out there. So a post that just says, this product is on special offer today, is probably not going to get that much engagement. However, what you'll find is a mix of types of content. So contents that involves people, that involves story behind the product, that generally does well. And actually it helps educate your customers so they can educate their own customers. So that's a good type of content. You generally find that imagery that shows emotion, and again this goes back to the psychology side, so the happy faces here, for example, will help that piece of content do better. That's not to say there is not a time and a place for putting your product imagery, and I think it's a good balance of the two. When it comes to video, you'll have noticed if you've been on social this morning that Unitas have posted videos of me, but actually there's 2 videos. There's a portrait one, which has gone on Facebook and Twitter stories, and then there's a landscape one that's gone onto the pages rather than the stories. And that's something that you need to think about. Every time you produce a video, you're going to need it in two formats. Also, what you'll probably find is the attention spans, depending on the network, will really vary. So I try to do videos for, say, Instagram stories that are only 15 seconds long, get the content out there quickly. If it's longer, then it's going to go on Instagram TV. You also find that live content does very well. It's almost like a one-off opportunity. So maybe arranging an interview with somebody to talk about a particular new product and the story behind that new product will do well as, say, an Instagram or a Facebook Live. You can even do LinkedIn Lives now to talk about topics. You just need to request permission because it's a new feature. And the last thing is learn to schedule, because I'm sure you've started thinking during this, oh, Karen's talked about a lot of things, and she's talked about posting content at downtime. So for example, if you were reaching a chef, then actually 11 o'clock at night or 5 o'clock at night is quite a good time, maybe even very early in the morning, sort of at 6 a.m. But we're not all online at that time to go and post our content. So there's a number of pieces of software out there. You might want to have a look at something like Hootsuite that will enable you to schedule your content across the channels. If you want to do it within the networks, then Facebook, for example, you can schedule your pieces of content going out at a particular time. And personally, for Twitter, I really love TweetDeck. And TweetDeck and Hootsuite work in a very similar way in terms of this column approach. So you can look at lots of different accounts at the same time and get a good overview. So I'm conscious I've told you quite a lot in quite a short space of time. If you want to learn more, well, one, enter the competition because you could get 3 months support from ourselves, and two, come back for the other sessions during the week. So tomorrow we're looking at the psychology behind social media content. So we'll look at principles such as the authority principle, scarcity, and liking, but a few more too. On Wednesday, we're looking at social media advertising. Thursday, we're going to go over, it's probably not the most exciting of the things I'm telling you this week, but probably one of the most important, and that's how to protect your accounts. And we'll also, though, talk about some of the new social network appearing and what they tell us about the type of social content we can produce going forward. And then we're really lucky on Friday. We have an interview with Walkers, and we'll be talking to one of their digital team all about managing social media. So I'll see you tomorrow.